Cursed covered bridges, ghostly graveyards, and brutal murder sites await on this list of some of the most haunted places in Cottage Grove, Oregon. Are you sure you're ready for this? Hey guys, thank you so much for joining me on this exploration into the history and hauntings of Cottage Grove. Boasting an array of outdoor activity sites, delicious home-cooked dining options, captivating historic murals, and probably more cemeteries than any community its size should ever claim, this humble expanse has also grown in infamy for a spine-tingling range of ghost stories and tales of the unknown. Let's jump right in. Cottage Grove, Oregon, which is placed in Lane County, just to the south of Eugene, is a quiet hamlet situated on just under 4 acres that boasts a population of around 11,000 as of the release of this video, being early 2024, and that ties itself to some of the state's spookiest legends and old hill folklore. Historically, various gold rushes across the country would drive settlers to the west coast in search of their fortune, and Oregon in particular would experience its richest era of prospecting from around 1850 to 1880. Naturally, as folks moved out west, a series of communities would form over time, and as homesteads sprouted up through present-day Lane County, what was known as the Cottage Grove Post Office was established in 1855, and would derive its name from its first postmaster, one C.G. Pierce, whose cottage was placed in a grove of old oak trees. In 1861, and with population fluctuations, this post office would be moved to the present-day site of Saginaw for a time. However, through the late 1860s, it would be moved onto the western bank of the Coast Fork Willamette River to lands that now hold the southwestern portion of present-day Cottage Grove. The late 19th century would issue a range of innovations, and with it would come the railroad. Incidentally, through the 1870s, as the Southern Pacific Railroad was laid through the region, Cottage Grove's railway station would be established all the way on the eastern side of the river, about 1.5 miles northeast of the post office. Unfortunately, not everyone in the locale at the time could cover this distance comfortably and in a timely manner, sparking a debate that lasted a whole 2 decades. During this period of conflict, in 1887, Cottage Grove was officially incorporated. However, due to the local unrest, and in those living on the river's east side literally rebelling in 1893, East Cottage Grove would also establish itself as a totally different township. Following concerns that those living near the post office and on the western banks would have to relocate from their family homes in order to be closer to the station, a news station was eventually established nearer the post office and would call itself the Lamottie Station, after the Chinook word for mountain. This Lamottie station would operate for just under a year, from November of 1893 to September of 1894, and ultimately, it would actually spur the community in March of 1895 into re-establishing itself as the town of Lamottie for a short time, though later, in May of 1898, it would revert itself back to Cottage Grove. Finally, to quell the long-standing feud in 1899, an act would be passed to officially consolidate both towns into one singular Cottage Grove, which it's remained as ever since. Now, as a local Oregonian, I have to say that trips I've taken to Cottage Grove have always been pretty cool. It's your classic Oregon small town, and there are some pretty interesting things to do should you ever decide to visit. Whether it's exploring some of the area's fascinating historical landmarks, swinging into the local pub, or enjoying hometown diner food, it's a place with something for pretty much everyone to enjoy. On a rather interesting side note, Cottage Grove holds the title of being the covered bridge capital of the West, and boasts a total of 6 classic covered bridges right near city limits, 5 of which, being the Chambers, the Curran, the Dorena, the Mosby Creek, and the Stewart, are actually all listed on the National Register of Historic Places. The 6th bridge, being the Centennial, is actually just a replica constructed of materials salvaged from other dismantled bridges, and the town's swinging bridge doesn't actually count as it's not technically a covered bridge, but rather a suspension footbridge. Additionally, Cottage Grove boasts 2 golf courses, its iconic Coiner Park, which includes tennis, pickleball, and basketball courts, 4 historical museums, and 21 awesome murals spread across the downtown area that all depict the community's history and that visitors can enjoy hunting down while exploring various other haunts the locale has to offer. Oh, and as some fun trivia, a fairly impressive range of films have actually been shot locally, including the 1926 Buster Keaton's The General, the 1973 Emperor of the North Pole, the 1978 Animal House, the 1986 classic Stand By Me, and 1997's Ricochet River. Chillingly, and in more recent times, the quaint town of Cottage Grove has racked up a rather surprising number of local ghost stories and reports of otherworldly activity. And within some of its oldest structures, both locals and tourists alike have reported instances of objects moving on their own, of disembodied voices and laughter heard emanating from empty spaces, and of encounters with shadowy figures that are usually spied out of the peripheral. One more iconic haunted hotspot in town is undoubtedly the historic Cottage Grove Hotel apartments. Constructed in 1917 as the Bartle Hotel, over its years, this site has played witness to a range of natural deaths and suicides, and more recently, in 2004, one Mark Stewart Clark Jr. would actually beat his ex-girlfriend Cynthia Ray Michaelis to death right within the lobby. Not surprisingly, both staff and residents of this old lodging-turned-apartments have reported a terrifying assortment of supernatural phenomena, including phantom footsteps heard walking or sometimes running up and down the halls, knocking on apartment doors and residents answering only to find no one in sight, and the sense of both tobacco and old-timey perfumes smelt wafting without source. Many who have entered the lobby where Michaelis was murdered have described a sort of heavy, anxious feeling, as if the air there is just a bit thicker, and a handful of witnesses have been sent rushing to the space after they describe what seemed to be the sounds of a scuffle complete with screaming and the smashing of furniture, only to arrive to find the room completely empty. Reported through the whole of Cottage Grove's historic district are encounters with full-bodied entities in clothing spanning the town's eras, instances of doors or windows opening and closing on their own, and accounts of well-maintained vehicles just refusing to start, especially at night, and especially when their potential drivers are alone. And a handful of paranormal investigations have yielded high EMF levels, crystal clear EVPs, and hits on communicative devices such as Ouija boards or spirit boxes. Another more notable haunt in town is that of the Cottage Grove Armory, which was constructed in 1931 to house the National Guard, and more recently, that's acted as stage to a number of graduation ceremonies, dances, sporting events, concerts, and more. Within the armory, many have reported disembodied voices, the constant feeling of being watched, and instances where individuals are tapped or have had their clothing tugged on by a force unseen. While Cottage Grove's bridges are certainly an esteemed attraction for those in search of history, some believe that seeking out all of the crossings over the course of a night may invoke the spirits that linger within, and those exploring these local landmarks have told of disembodied bootsteps heard over their planks, of cell phones and other personal electronics behaving erratically, and of strange grunts, growls, or screams that emanate from the waters below. Lastly, despite its size, the town of Cottage Grove boasts an astounding 11 cemeteries. Yes, you heard that right. 11 different burying grounds that range from more urban constructs to potter's fields tucked out in the back country. And those who have braved these graveyards have told of orbs that flit through the skies and above certain markers, of run-ins with ethereal forms that manifest suddenly, startling all nearby, and of encounters with disturbing, pale creatures that appear almost human, but that scuttle around on all fours and that are seemingly afraid of light. With its intriguing history and ridiculously large assortment of supernaturally charged locations, the sleepy town site of Cottage Grove stands as a monument to Oregonian Old Hill folklore and culture, and invites any who step foot onto its grounds to explore a realm where reality converges with spectral whispers of the past, while reminding us that in some of the most unsuspecting places, you never really know what you'll find just around the corner. Thanks for joining me on this exploration of Cottage Grove's history and its many hauntings. If you enjoyed hearing my ghost stories, subscribe to my channel, throw this upload a like, and share me with anyone you feel could use a good scare. I'll see you all next time.